This is the Entrepreneur Podcast, where we have the privilege of interviewing entrepreneurs and business owners here in the Pacific Northwest. I am your host, Isaac Schaefer.
And I am your co-host, Drew West. You ready to get into it, man?
Let's go.
What is up, guys?
How's it going?
Good.
Thanks for coming, Sam.
Thank you for
thanks,
having me.
Andrew, you like that intro way too much.
Dude, I do like it way too much. It's great.
Every time I like to just watch your reaction.
Dude, we admittedly only picked it out last night?
Yeah.
And we both heard it and we were like, boom, baby.
That's
That is
the one.
That was
That's
it.
the one.
Yeah.
So today we have Sam Larsen, and Sam is, I was going to say the owner. Are you the only owner, or you have multiple owners, correct?
Co-owner. It's
Co-owner.
all family-owned, family business.
Okay.
It's my wife and I and my mom and my dad.
Okay, cool. Co-owner of the Waffle Stop here in Tacoma, Washington. So, yeah, I mean, tell us about Waffle Stop and kind of how that started.
Yeah. Waffle Stop started in 2018, so in January. So we're quickly coming up on our 5-year anniversary.
That's
which,
exciting.
given what's happened between 2018
Absolutely.
and now, is an accomplishment.
It's a huge success.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. But the idea was born back in 2016. I was working in finance, actually, and my dad was running an engineering firm that he's ran for 25, 30 years, since retired. But it was a literal dinner table conversation because breakfast is something that connected our family growing up when we would travel and experience new towns. My dad had this very specific rule, which I don't think he understood what he was doing at the time for us. It was a no chain rule. So we'd go to like Phoenix and it was like no chain restaurants, no local chains.
I love that.
No national chain, no chains.
Yeah.
And we weren't foodies. It was just, I think it was we're not going to do McDonald's on vacation, guys.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with McDonald's. I jammed on the Happy Meals when they had the tech decks in them. I was...
Oh, yeah.
So no
Righteous.
local chains, like no In-N-Out Burger, though?
No, we were really not an In-N-Out family growing up.
Oh, man,
you
see,
know.
that's my asterisk sat rule, because I don't think we have that like as a written rule in my house, but it's kind of something my wife and I agree on, and I'd say most of my family, it's like, why would we go to Olive Garden when we can go to this local Italian restaurant? Like, let's do that. But when we're in California, we get
Double,
In-N-Out Burger.
animal style.
Animal
For
style,
sure.
baby. Yeah.
There are certain things. I'm still not a big chain person, but Chick-fil-A, all about.
Pretty bomb. Yeah.
Pretty bomb. There are certain
Yeah.
things that transcend. It's a chain, but they do things well.
Yeah.
And In-N-Out's one of those. Shake Shack, one of those. There's a lot of those restaurants that do things really, really well, I think. But growing up anyway, going back to kind of our family and the history of Waffle Stop, is that really embedded in us the search for a good restaurant, the search for something fun, something different, and how that really kind of played out is that we really liked to explore, and we would connect over that. It was before cell phones, everything was at your fingertips. So sometimes you had to do a little searching, a little driving around. So you'd get hungrier and hungrier. Your standards would get lower and lower the longer you would search. But, when you go on vacation, you're busy. You're doing a lot of different things. And that's usually when we would dine out. And so when we were doing that is really you connect over breakfast. And breakfast became that special meal that we would connect. We'd have every meal together because you're on a family vacation. Why would you not? But it was breakfast that always brought us together. And so my dad, we were sitting at a dinner table. My wife and I had just gotten married. I was working in finance. My wife was, working in corporate human resources. And my dad had said, oh, what if we opened up a, restaurant one day and called it Waffle Stop and served waffles? And I was like, oh, haha, yeah, that's fun. That sounds fun. That'd be a good idea. Talked about it for a few minutes, forgot about it, drove home. It kind of came up every couple months, and then I think my wife had said, "Are you guys serious about this?" And I was like, "Well, I mean, one day maybe, that would be kind of fun." And thinking, maybe one day being like after, hopefully a successful career working in finance, having a lot of cash to where you don't have to bet the farm and, going and doing that. That's the sunset. That's the second career, that you hope for.
Sure.
And it really quickly kind of continued to snowball. The conversations picked up. It became something that really turned from kind of a silly idea to, oh, well, maybe let's mock up a business plan and see what that would look like. And it was kind of like every once in a while, it would come up and it'd be like, oh, well, let's maybe explore that. Let's maybe explore that. And it got to this point where I called a family friend of ours who was a restaurant consultant and executive and said, I need you to tell me if this is a dumb idea or not. And he was a family friend of my wife's. And so he just loved my wife dearly and was like, well, because I love her so much, I'm going to shoot you straight because I'm not going to let you tank your family.
Yeah, for sure.
That's pretty cool, though.
That's awesome.
No,
That's
it was
great.
great. It was great. And that kind of became a theme as I've been lucky enough to be surrounded with a lot of really great people that gave really sound advice and really helped frame the business. And so I get a lot of credit for, especially because I'm the one that works in the business, I get a lot of credit for all of the successes and all the failures, but all the successes that we enjoy and have enjoyed over the years. And, I'm like a very small, my fingers are an inch from each other right now. I'm a very small piece of it. I'm just the aggregator of everything. But over time, that morphed. It was from that point we got connected with a few people, some, industry, like a chef and, some marketers that were familiar with the industry. And we really kind of started to pencil out our brand. The brand really came from our family. The Waffle Stop, the name was we were like, oh, let's put a pin dot in that project. That's the name, the working name for the project. And it became the business name.
So that was actually one of my questions. So I've conceptualized a couple different things, probably multiple, count them, maybe one hand. And one of the biggest barriers has been the stinking name. So was it really that easy for you guys? It was just the idea and then boom, that's what we're doing.
I don't know how long my dad had been sitting on that.
Oh,
so I
sure.
can't speak for him.
Sure.
But he just offhanded, we'll call it Waffle Stop. And I was like, oh, that's
That's
stop
nice.
in and
That's a
get
great
some
name.
stop in
It
and
is
get
a
some
great name.
waffles, whatever. And
Yeah.
we were like, okay, cool. But it's not, it's a fun name, but it's not trendy.
Yeah,
And
sure.
a lot of our favorite places, really had a certain vibe and aesthetic to it. And we were like, well, if we're going to kind of base it off of our experiences, not to be derivative of other places, but really to make something that brought us joy, something that we would want to ourselves dine at. Because we weren't industry veterans. We were from, my dad and my mom met at a Kentucky Fried Chicken when they were teenagers. That's the hospitality industry experience that our family brought to the table. So nothing.
Yeah.
Right.
My first job in a restaurant was the day that we opened Waffle
Wow.
Stop. And so that's
What a
whole
leap for you guys.
Yeah, a complete leap of faith. But
So-
the name, we didn't love the name. At first we were like, I don't like it. It became the, Word document title, but we were like, that'll be something that changes. And then we were working with, about a year later, we were working with, our marketing agency that kind of built the artwork and the brand profile. And we were like, well, guys, we got to pick a name because they can't do artwork and do a logo for a formless entity, and we were like, well, it's, and so we kind of talked about it for like a month before. And when it came go time of like, we got to sign the check and start doing this, it was like, hey, if we don't come with a better idea by Monday, that's the name.
This is it.
So Waffle Stop.
There we go. Well, I think it's perfect.
I do too.
Yeah.
I think it's great. I mean, it's very clear what you guys are about. And, I don't know. It's just, it's quick, it's simple, it's easy to remember. I like it.
Yeah.
So what year, what year was it when, I'm sorry if you already said this, what year was it when you had that conversation at dinner? Because you said you opened in 2018, right?
Yeah, 2016 was
Okay.
when the journey began.
Okay.
I think it might have been late 2015.
Okay, so 2 years.
Yeah, it'd been 2
from
years.
start to finish, or well, start to start, I should say.
Pretty much.
2 years. How do you even know where to begin? I guess you began by just talking about it, and then you found a restaurant consultant. And I'm guessing he probably just steered you on the right path, because if you asked me where do you start if you want to start a restaurant, I'd be like, I have no idea. I'd probably do the same thing. Find somebody who's done it.
Yeah. Which is, his name is Dennis. He was fantastic for us, and he, as the family connection, we got probably more than we deserved from him. But he immediately, the first thing that he sent me was a Word document that he had typed up over his years of consulting of 100 reasons to not open a restaurant.
Oh,
He was
love
like,
that.
will you read this? And, I was after he said, no, I think that's a pretty good idea. I kind of was like, gave him like the quick, elevator pitch. And he's like, no, this is a good idea. It's not a bad one. I'm going to send you something. And once you read that, and once you get through it, give me a call back and we'll talk. And that was what it was 100 reasons to not open a restaurant. And it had, various things, like really real things, like how difficult the industry is, the challenges that you face. You got to really love what you do to grind through the beginning to get to the part that's really fun. And you also have to learn to enjoy and have fun in that initial founding. Those are the good old days.
Yeah.
So you need to recognize that. But it was also stuff is like, if you're looking to create a bar that you're going to drink with after work, don't open a restaurant, stuff like that, which is, it's not goofy. That is a real thing.
Yeah.
But, he was like, if you're really interested in doing this, here's the 100 reasons not to. And if you're still interested, let's do this. And I got through it and I called him back, and we started. He sent me an actual kind of big, long, like 300-point punch list of things that need to be done to open a restaurant. And it was like, okay, let's just start working through this. And
what was the most daunting thing on that list, if you can remember? Or even retroactively, what is what was the hardest thing you did not expect before, in order to get the restaurant started?
I think transforming it from a brand into a business. You have the idea when you're conceptualizing something, and restaurants, there's a lot of people that touch your food, and we're a full service restaurant. And so, even if we're not busy, there's 6 or 7 people touching your food, and being, somebody, we make everything from scratch. So somebody prepped those ingredients and put them on the line. We had a couple people on the line that cooked those. We had somebody that greeted you at the door, and somebody that's serving your table, somebody that's making your coffee, and so there's a lot of hands that go in there. That's a lot of coordination that goes into making those dishes. And so I think when we formed the business, we're like, well, we want to create a really fun, dynamic brand. Everything has to be made from scratch, which I'm really proud that we do. But that's really hard to coordinate. And you have to be able to clearly communicate that vision and how you want that done. And that was really, I didn't know that at the time, but once we read through that list and started to create kind of our service plan, what was our service style going to look like? And then actually getting on the floor and executing it time after time, because you're doing it, a couple hundred times a day. That's hard to do. It's hard to do. Yeah. It's hard to get it right every single time. And you want to. You take it personally, and you really, really want, we've tasted the food. We went through it with the chef, and we're like, this is fantastic. And then it's like, I want everybody that comes through the door to have that same experience and wonder that first time, biting into that dish that we did. And so,
exactly. That's
but that becomes challenging.
Yeah, for sure.
What is or maybe you don't have one. Do you have a clearly written vision that you share with your employees before you hire them, or that you advertise? If you could, I don't know, like a marketing vision or elevator pitch? Elevator pitch.
We want to be the greatest neighborhood restaurant that we can be. And, we're in the Proctor district, so it's a small neighborhood. It's grown immensely over the years since we went in there. It's got a lot of great restaurants, a lot of, good, we don't view them as competitors, a lot of restaurants. Neighborhood restaurants are geographically always concentrated near each other, and it's because it's complementary. It's a complementary activity, and you have these great shops and everything. And so it has a great mix of residents, people that live there, people that live in apartments, people that have lived in that neighborhood for years. And we always kind of envisioned ourselves as a modern diner. What the American diner was and still is for communities was a community gathering point. And so we really wanted to be like the greatest modern diner. That was something for us. And I wish that we had just a super succinct and beautiful pitch that we give all of our employees as we onboard. But we don't. We try to, when you first start up, you don't have all of the resources in line that you wish you did. And, unfortunately, sometimes the business, adopts the same strengths and weaknesses as the founder. And that kind of, those aren't my strengths. We have a lot of great, fantastic team members that have over the years that have kind of, filled in those areas where I'm not strong, and has even taken those areas that I'm strong at and made them better. But that's one of those things where, internal human resources, that's hard. It's hard to motivate and, direct everybody in the direction that you want them to go, but also I think even more so nowadays, making sure that it works for them as well.
Yeah, I can completely relate. I used to manage this brokerage, and the real estate's different. We have 1099 real estate agents, and then you have employees. And managing employees is hard. Now, I mean, we had great employees. I didn't have any, bad experiences, but it's still hard because you want them to be a part of the team and feel like it's their company as well. Like you want them to take ownership and be proud of this company and their work and what they do. But at the same time, you have to have guidelines, and you have to tell them when they're doing something incorrect. And so, yeah, managing employees, I would say, was probably the hardest part. And again, I was lucky. I only had like 3 or 4 at a time, and they were all great. But it's still hard. Managing employees is very hard.
It is, and it's that's been my biggest area of learning, because also I said, my first day working at a restaurant was the first day we opened. Well, the first time that I ever had a direct report was the first day we opened a restaurant as well, and we had 22 of them, and so it was overwhelming, and you make a lot of mistakes, and you assume your vision, as beautifully crafted and well thought out as it is going to translate to everybody, and it's going to hit home in the same way that that it hit home for you. And it sometimes it does, and they understand that vision, and sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes they have a different idea of executing that same vision. And I didn't see that right away. I saw things, management, kind of very black and white, and that's one thing that on the other side of these 5 years I've really learned is allowing and being comfortable letting other people adopt your vision, and while still providing those guidelines and that framework. Hey, here's the yard that we're going to play in. You can play anywhere in this yard as creatively as you want, but you got to stay in the yard. You got to stay within this framework of the company, because that's our brand, that's our experience, that's what our guests are expecting, that's what our stakeholders need from us. You got to pay bills on time if you're a manager. You have to greet your table with a smile if you're a server. You have to work cleanly if you're in the kitchen. It's like, but there's also a lot of room for interpretation and innovation. And I was very closed off to new ideas when we opened, because I felt like there was a small flame that Waffle Stop was, and I needed to protect it from getting snuffed out, and over time I've learned that allowing other people to kind of put fuel on that fire and creatively, and I'm more the conduit for those ideas now. And especially now that we have 2 restaurants and a coffee shop, I can't see every guest that walks through the door, unfortunately, because that's actually my favorite part of the job. That's why we went into the industry. That's why I felt called into the hospitality industry in the first place. But you can't do that. You can't be at the end point executing everything. And so you really do have to work with your employees, and work with your team, and allow and empower them and let them put their spin. I don't brand it that way when we're talking as hey, you put your spin on it, but that's really is what it is, and I think, there's a lot of that's been said over, with employment over the last 2-3 years with the pandemic and all the hiring issues. I think we've all heard about them. We've all talked about them. But I was talking to a friend of mine and who's works at a larger corporate entity, and his company did a giant study on employee engagement and what is the younger generation, because the restaurant, we employ a lot of younger individuals, Gen Z, and what are they looking for? And they're looking for a connection with the brand. They're looking for a connection in how you do things, and they want to have a hand in shaping it. And so, I think they get a bad rap sometimes, because they can also, that generation, as a generalization, can be flighty, but can't we all?
Yeah.
I don't think it's really bound to, an age or a demographic or anything like that. But they are more willing to move on to greener pastures if it doesn't align. The company is not aligning with their values and allowing them to shape it.
Yeah, they're less likely to stay stuck. They're more likely to go out and find something that more aligns with them, which I think is good.
There can be some great freedom in that. And it puts pressure on businesses to interact with them differently. And that when you have to interact differently, especially if you're a larger entity, you're less nimble. And so you have these ingrained ways of doing business, and you have to shift that over time. And I think we're seeing a shift.
So I think you kind of just answered my question in regards to that, but I think it would be super helpful because of the woes that we've all heard about people not being able to hire employees or people not staying. Do you have any advice for anyone out there who's looking for some good employees? It sounds like your brand, building your brand, and kind of having, letting people have a little bit of not necessarily a say, but kind of a molding of what that's going to be for them has kind of been how you're keeping, retaining, and hiring good employees. Do you have any advice for anyone who might be having that issue?
I think you kind of said it.
Yeah, sure. That's what I was thinking too. Is that you might have just answered it.
We're lucky. We have managers at our locations, and I've learned so much from both of them over the last couple of years, seeing how they manage, how they deal with their respective staffs. They have two completely different contexts, and so we give them a lot of latitude in how they manage. One of our locations employs a lot of minors, and we have a liquor license and everything. There's a lot of rules, and that requires a lot of different care than if people are of age and have the full license to serve, and that impacts everything from scheduling and everything. And she our manager out there, Amy, she's so flexible with the staff, and she's really built that in, and she's built a culture of kind of a community in there. And I don't know. I don't, as far as delivering that through a podcast into a really, specific point, it's hard. But what I've seen both of our managers do really well is learn their staff, know their staff, be not overly accommodating. They hold that what needs to get done for the business, because that is, at the end of the day, we do need to do what's best as a business, as a manager, as an owner, entrepreneur. You know what's best for your business, and you do have to do those things. But there's also other ways to do it. And so, learning your staff, knowing your staff is one of the biggest things that I've learned from them, is that they really find creative ways to solve problems based on their specific, unique context. I think right now there's so much content out there in the world, and we have the tendency to grab something or see something working somewhere else and try to directly apply it. And I know that because I've done that so many times. You read a book and you're like, oh, that's a great idea on how to manage. I'm going to try to implement that. And it falls flat. And I was like, oh, I took a great idea and I didn't apply it in my context. And so I think it really matters less what you're doing and more like specifically, and more how you approach that with your team.
I love that. That's great.
And every business is different.
Yeah.
Some businesses, I used to work in banking, not a lot of room for creativity. There's a lot of regulations. There's a lot of ways, there's a lot of, and rightfully so. It's hard to allow somebody working in banking to put their creative spin on something. So it really depends on the industry. And we're lucky enough to be in an industry where we can be flexible with schedules. We can be flexible with benefits. We can be flexible with, a lot of different things. And I think people are leaving the hospitality industry en masse, but I think there's also a lot of really beautiful things about it.
Have you had situations or a situation where you've had an employee who just exceeds expectations, and perhaps, I'm potentially putting words in your mouth, perhaps they are overqualified for the role you hired them for? Do you have avenues for them to work up in your business that, because you can see, or your manager can see and say, like, this person, was hired as this, and now they have more potential to grow? Do you have like an avenue for employees to do that? Employees who maybe aren't content with just greeting someone at the door, not just as in that's not a very important role, it is, but perhaps like they have, bigger ideas, and you're using their ideas, and you're like, okay, we could see you growing with this company. Have you guys gotten there yet?
Informally, some of the best products on our menu are from ideas that our employees have had.
That's awesome.
And you have to be there to listen. I think that's the one blessing of being a small business that you get to have, is we can be really nimble. If you're involved in the business and you're attuned to what's happening on a day-to-day basis or a week-to-week basis, you can identify those strong performers. You can identify those people that it's easier to stand out because the crowd is smaller. Mm-hmm. And it's also, we're a pretty flat organization. We don't have a large corporate headquarters. We don't have a lot of overhead to pay for, but we also don't have a lot of overhead. It's really easy for me to interact with all of our staff, and It's easy for them to get a hold of me or a hold of our operations manager or any of our managers. And so it's easier to stand out in a smaller organization if you're paying attention as leaders. And that's something that we've done. We've done it informally. We don't have a formal manager and training process or anything. And but what you do is you just have to listen. You have to listen, and sometimes you have to say no. And sometimes a product is, if it's a product development idea, might be a great idea and the wrong execution or the wrong context or not the right season or, for some reason. And so, but being able to dialogue and work with those people and say, well, how could we tweak that? And those people that react well to that and take feedback, it's kind of an informal training of how do you work as a team? Not every idea is going to make it through. I have a notebook of every idea for Waffle Stop and iteration as we were founding it. And I look through it from time to time just to see, have we delivered on the promise that we made as a family? But also just to kind of look through it, go down memory lane. And some of those ideas I'm really glad died in that notebook. Some of them are great and some of them are living and breathing today. Some of them are awful. And so it's, I think how you as a leader allow that creativity to come through, as far as product development. But since we don't have those formal processes, we try to be pretty transparent in our operations. We open our books to our staff as much as we can. It's easy.
Can you elaborate on that? What do you mean?
There's certain things that that matter for day-to-day operations, like how much are we spending on labor? What does our food cost? Some of those big cost objects. How much does a pair of gloves cost? Or a box of gloves or a case of gloves cost?
Do you feel like that transparency has helped, like with food cost and with like when you open up and you're like, hey, check it out. This is what this actually cost. Do you think that has helped, kind of being more of an open book?
Overall, no.
No.
But if you provide the information, some people don't care, and that's okay because they aren't being paid to manage food cost.
Yeah.
That's kind of a simplified way of thinking about it. But I don't, just by opening up, I don't expect people to engage in it. But the people that are interested in learning and growing, by offering those opportunities to, hey, let's put forth a product development idea. Let's, open up, our recipe book and, some of our financials, and, those people that are interested will seek it out because they know it's available and they'll look at it and they will make different decisions. And then if you're, as a, management group and ownership, if you're attuned to that and you can recognize that, then you can engage with those specific individuals and really give them extra attention. You give them extra opportunities. We've hired, like what you said, Isaac, is we've hired, I can think of a handful of people that started in one position and ended up in another. And that's great. It's great because as you learn each and every part of the business, you become more valuable, but you also get to learn and grow when you're on your own. And you get to think of the different, ways that, how did my previous role impact operations? How does this role impact operations? And, in the restaurant industry, it's fast paced, it's fast moving. Tensions are high. Sometimes, in a lot of restaurants, you'll have, your servers in the front of the restaurant kind of be at odds with the kitchen and how they do things. And there's a quarrel back and forth. And I'm really proud that, we've had moments, but as a team, we really pull together as a team. And I think it is sometimes because you have people that flop between those roles and you get to see, oh, okay, it's not, cooking in the kitchen isn't as easy as dealing with guests. And, or, it's not as easy as I thought. It's not, there's a lot of different things. It gives people just different perspective, which that's life, as you gain perspective and see new things, you look at the world differently and you grow. And so, I hope that answers your question.
It did. No, it did. One of my favorite things for perspective to do with employees when I was at Starbucks, there was always, I'm curious if you guys have this too, there was always a little feud between the openers and the closers. You got that? Okay, yeah. The openers always thought the closers had it easy because they had lesser crowd, and it was easier, and they just had to get ready for next day. And they're always like, oh, they didn't prep this right, or they didn't prep this right. And the closers are like, we only have 3 people here, and you guys have a full staff, and we have to serve people even though there's less. Anyways, I would try to every once in a while schedule an opener for a close. And vice versa. I mean, I was a little biased towards the closes because I was a closer mainly. But yeah, I feel like people, when they saw the different perspective, they appreciated their job more, and they appreciated that the other jobs once you're in it aren't as easy as they look. Mm-hmm. So that was helpful.
Yeah, that's smart.
Can you talk? I'm very fascinated by business owners in regards to. Goals for goals for cash flow, but not specific numbers of like how much money you want to make, but more percentages. So I'll relate it to our real estate brokerage. Our goal was to get to our overhead being no more than 80% of total revenue. So what we total. So if in a month we brought in $50,000, we wanted the cash flow for the company to be 10,000 at least or more. Do you have metrics for that? Do you have like payroll should be no more than X percent? Food costs should be no more than this. Do you have metrics like that? And are you willing to kind of share just maybe what's your goal to hit on those? I'm very interested when talking to business owners what those goals are.
Better than industry average is our goal.
Okay.
We have pretty firm budgets, and we have our managers write those. We work with them to do that. It's not something that we take up top and hand down to them. As we expect a little entrepreneurial mindset out of our managers, out of our team, and that also gives them the operating freedom to make a decision about certain things. Restaurants. There's a lot of repairs and maintenance that need to take place. A sink busts, something happens. If you're only playing to try to get your bonus, you might hold off on certain repairs. And you do want certain margins, but you also want to make the right call, because you stack enough of those deferred maintenance, deferred something, deferred other things, is pretty soon you have a place that's in shambles, or something that's not working right. Or if you have a piece of equipment go down and don't repair it because, that seems expensive. It's like, well, it is, but it's more expensive to have our entire staff have to work around it.
That's interesting.
It's not kind to staff, not kind to, the bottom line. It's not kind to you because it's making it harder for you to hit your bonus. It kind of creates other problems. And so you have to be really involved in those numbers, but we do have really firm budgets that we set for things and benchmarks that we try to hit. We look at it in 2 ways. You look at your operating costs, your variable cost, your unit cost, and then we look at our fixed cost.
Do you mind elaborating on those terms in case people aren't familiar with those terms? What are operating costs and variable costs and so on?
Yeah. So we call our variable costs our operating costs. It's just what the title on the document that we look at every week is called. But variable costs are, the cost that it takes to produce a unit. So if it produced that waffle and serve it to a guest, that includes your service staff salaries, your, cook salaries, it doesn't include management. At least for us, every business can set up their profit and loss statement differently. But if there's any takeout packaging involved for takeout or delivery orders, we would include that. The linen, we have linen napkins on the table to kind of elevate the breakfast experience and keep the silverware nice and clean. That's included. All of those bills of things that go towards serving the guest. Technically, everything does. And then your fixed costs are your rent, your things that you have to pay, even if nobody comes through the door.
Rent, electricity, taxes,
music, the music that you're playing. We view, repair and maintenance. It's a non-negotiable. Cleaning our hoods, cleaning our grease traps, those kinds of things.
You can't decide not to do that.
Exactly. And that's more, we get to decide what those are, but those are our fixed costs. And so, but what we really focus on a weekly, monthly basis is what we can control, our variable costs. And then and those are really the budgets. Those are the big cost drivers, labor, food, and then takeout packaging, especially with COVID, it's gone through the roof. And that's where all the inflationary measures have their fun with you, is in the variable costs too. But yeah, we do have those, and we take a look at those. One of the things that we try to preach though is, the financials are a byproduct of doing something else really, really well. And it's easier to say that when you're breaking even or making money. It's harder to say when you start out, because if you don't have the cash to do something, that's really challenging. And so, I don't mean that as a pie in the sky statement, but financials really are. It's not about trying to get that linen bill. We have thousands of napkins come through, and you don't want to, if you drop some or get them dirty, it's spoilage. You can't use those at a table. And so, you could be looking at the bill trying to manage that, or let's create the system that manage those really well. Let's make sure that there's a nice place to store them, that we have make sure that the closers and not the openers are rolling silverware, and making sure that our operating system matches up with the financial results that we want. And so that way, when we go out on the floor and we're providing hospitality and service to our guests, we're not, even as managers, in the back of our minds thinking, about the P&L. We're serving the guest. And if we serve the guest well, because the system is set up well, we should expect to see, this percentage of food cost. It should cost this much. It should take this much labor to get to that. And our, janitorial supplies and linen and all of that other stuff should cost this. And so when we see overages, we really dive into, well, why did that happen? Did it happen because our system is bad, or did it happen because we mismanaged it in some way? Or was it something else? There's a lot of reasons why, you cannot arrive at the results that you want. But we always try to make the financials, you look at them, you stress about them, you dream about them at night. But at the end of the day, it shouldn't be the primary focus when the doors open at the beginning of the day.
How often do you, as a management staff and ownership staff, not staff, ownership, how often do you look at those numbers and review them as a team and discuss them and see how you can improve?
We, as on the ground, our managers, so at each unit, we have a manager meeting every week. We go over those, we talk about them, because it's fresh in your mind. And that's where, hey, this number was high. Oh, well, that's because of this. We can all kind of call out those points, get on the same page, and say, oh, this is why, those little micro movements. Because restaurants, like a lot of business, it's a business of pennies and nickels and dimes. They add up. When you serve a couple thousand guests a week, a little error that repeats itself, it's not a dime anymore. That's
right, a dime per dish is a lot, considering how many dishes you serve per day.
Exactly. And so we tackle those things when it's fresh and we can remember it. And that works for our business. Maybe for a real estate office, it's different. You don't need to go over that. There's not enough activity during that, but we do a high volume of low ticket items. And so we go over things a lot, very frequently. And then, ownership will meet once a month. And usually we have, we're family, so we see each other more. So we talk about it more than that, but we try to dedicate formal time to talk about it about every month, and review the budget and, make sure that things are trending the way that we want to. We don't want to be surprised. Early on in my career, I had a manager tell me mistakes are okay. But surprises are not, which basically meant communicate well. It's okay if we shoot for the moon, miss it. It's okay if we, miskey something or make a mistake, but that's not the mistake. The mistake is surprising me with it in a report at the end of the month. I should know what's coming.
That's a really good way of putting it.
It was great, and it stuck with me ever since. And so that's why we look at things frequently, is so that way we're not surprised. And also that way you can adapt to those changes and hopefully change the end result if it's heading in a direction you don't want it to.
Yeah. One, maybe a little bit of a tangent, but I think it's in line. One great book that I think every manager should read and owner should read is called Black Box Thinking. I think that's what it's called. I'm going to try and be very brief. It's a book that somebody wrote saying how the airline industry does it very well, where they have complete anonymity, barring doing something completely blatantly negligible, such as showing up to fly a plane drunk, right? That's not, you don't have anonymity or immunity for that. But whenever you make a mistake, you are encouraged to go say, hey, I made a mistake and here's why it happened. And here's what I think we can do to avoid it. And the book's whole premise is that's how every business should be run, is encouraging people to point out when they made a mistake. Because normally, unless you, for an extreme example, unless you show up to your shift drunk or something like that, normally most mistakes are caused by something something that happened that then made you think this was the right choice, but it wasn't the right choice. And so if you bring it up, then it's like, well, how can we make sure that doesn't happen, or a better solution is more obvious for people in the future? I thought it was a really interesting book. I would really encourage it.
And interesting. Who's the author?
Can't remember. It's a really tragic story. It starts out, he mainly picks on the medical industry because the author was somebody who his wife went in for, I read it a while ago, so I'm not going to have much of the details, but his wife went in for a pretty normal procedure, like on the scale of like getting your appendix out, like nothing, but happens all the time and everyone normally survives, right? And she died. And he just looked into it and he was like, what happened? And it was a bunch of little mistakes. And he realized that nurses and doctors were scared as hell to say anything about it because they didn't want to be sued or lose their license or whatever. And so that's kind of the premise of the book. It's a fantastic book.
Interesting. I think it was the Checklist Manifesto book that had a similar story about the pilot, and there was a co-pilot, and the environment wasn't created to dissent.
That's a much better way of saying it.
It was heading in, the plane it unfortunately crashed and nobody made it out, but the plane was heading it was on the wrong plane of flight. And the co-pilot would continue to suggest, I think you might be a little low or you might be off a little bit. And then, only said, hey, we're in the wrong place. The runway's over there, like when it was way too late. And it was because that system hadn't been set up to descent, and I'm probably butchering the story a little bit there, but it is so true because it kind of goes back to what the black box theory is, you can even have the system set up, but you as a leader really need to be the kind of person that people feel comfortable saying the runway's over there.
Yeah.
Or, this procedure's not going well. Because if you're not the type of person to receive feedback well, nobody's going to give it.
Yeah.
And you're going to think, hey, I have no bad feedback. But
well, the name
there might be a reason for that.
Yeah. The name comes from now in every commercial airline, there is a black box that records everything. Everything right when they get in the cockpit. And that's something they implemented. And the pilots union has immunity, if as long as, again, they're not doing something blatantly wrong, that they can't get sued, they can't go to prison for something that, even if they made a blatant mistake, but it was a mistake. And so I don't know. I thought it was very helpful to me when I was managing this office. I went to my employees at the time and said, like, hey, mistakes are fine. Let's talk about it. When you make a mistake, be like, hey, guess what? I did this. We should talk about it. Why did I do this? And then, okay, how can we make the how can we make it more obvious in the future, how to handle that differently? Mm-hmm. So anyway, sorry for the tangent.
No, that's awesome. So it was Matthew Syed.
Sounds right.
Black Box Thinking. Just pulled it up. So check it out. It is very, very interesting.
You read it?
Anyone? Yeah. You recommended it to me about a year ago, and it was really, really good. I'd like to pivot, if you guys don't mind, kind of talk about open a whole new box a little bit. So you started in January 2018. You're the new kids on the block. You're rocking and rolling. Things are going great. And then boom, 2020. Dude, it
What
sounds
happened in
like
2020?
yeah, it sounds like not only did you survive, but you guys have thrived. You opened. When did you open up your second location?
Last year, April of 2022.
And then the coffee shop.
Yep, which was also April of 2022.
So, yeah, you got through it pretty well. Do you want to talk about, maybe some things that you guys did and how you were able to take what you guys built and make it a complete success through a pandemic? Like, you heard the complete opposite story. I opened up, had all of these ideas, it was great, and then had to shut down because of COVID. You clearly didn't do that. You did something awesome.
Can I add a parallel before you answer the question?
Absolutely.
In real estate, COVID surprisingly was not bad. COVID, for a lot of reasons, the real estate market skyrocketed. So we didn't really experience COVID like most businesses did. Our businesses really thrived. I mean, the market just went skyrocketed, interest rates plummeted, everybody wanted to buy, everybody wanted to sell. It was easy. Now, interest rates are high. And in real estate, I have a lot of real estate agents talking to me, and they're like, well, I'm going to cut back on marketing. I'm going to reduce what I'm doing. And I'm thinking, no, now is the time to double down when everybody else is afraid, for lack of a better way of saying that. So it's interesting. The parallel is it's interesting because we're in our scary time right now in real estate because we're both real estate agents. And so I'm curious to hear, how did you have the courage, like Andrew said, to say, no, we're going to double down. We're going to start another restaurant and a coffee shop.
Well, it didn't happen that pretty. We're really, really lucky and blessed to be on this side of it in the circumstance that we are, and still be rocking and serving people and employing our staff and everything. It was just the difference between us and the restaurants that didn't make it, that margin, that difference in gap between us is really not that big. It could have easily been us. There was a lot of, things that happened that are outside of your control, those external factors. It could have been location. It could have been like a micro geographic reason why you failed. We are in a neighborhood that employs a lot of knowledge-based workers. They were at home in our neighborhood. That's something we didn't control. We did a lot of economic analysis before we signed our lease. But it made us look really smart because the neighborhood's grown so much on its own, and those people moved in. There were a lot of people moving up from California, a lot of people that were already working remote by the time the pandemic had hit, that we continued to serve once the pandemic hit, when we shifted to takeout only. That wouldn't have happened if we were 5 minutes down the street, so there's a lot, and that's just one example of many. But one thing that we decided to do the minute I was actually in the hospital with my wife, we had just given birth to our daughter like 2 days before, and one morning woke up, got a phone call. Hey, they're closing restaurants down, like tomorrow. Like, this is the last day.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, okay.
I'm sure that's what you said.
I mean,
okay. Roger that.
I was like, all righty, well, we'll come up with a plan, and it's like, I think I did, it was like, oh, okay, well, I'll give you a call back. And it was our manager, and I called back, and, we talked about it as ownership, and we were like, hey, you know what? We opened to serve people. And so we're going to be open tomorrow. And a lot of restaurants chose to close, and everybody has their own circumstances they were dealing with. And we decided that what was best for our circumstance was to close our dining room, but open up takeout and engage with delivery the best we could. We'd actually, a month before, we had taken delivery offline because it wasn't working for us. Because when we originally in our business plan hadn't planned for delivery, and delivery and takeout was like a very small, before the pandemic, a very small percentage of our overall revenue.
Especially for breakfast, I would think.
Yeah.
I do a lot of delivery, but I don't deliver breakfast.
I mean, eggs are easy. Eggs are easy to
Wi-
make. They don't stay
yeah.
hot very long. I mean, I'm, just giving a glowing review to order takeout from Waffle Stop right now. But, but it is breakfast. Our biggest competitor, I've said this a few times, our biggest competitor as a breakfast restaurant, pandemic aside.
Can we guess?
Tell me.
Me. me
Wait, was
cooking at
that?
home.
Oh man, that was a great guess. I wasn't.
That's you. That's
Yep.
it.
Okay.
Yep.
Dang it. Okay.
Yep. I read a stat. It's like 33% of people on a given day eat breakfast at home.
Yeah.
33% is a pretty large market share, so people's homes are our biggest competitor. You have to give people a compelling offer to come out and eat.
Man, I totally would have been wrong.
And what was yours?
Oh yeah. What was your guess?
I was gonna guess McDonald's.
Oh.
There's so many people I know who it's like their morning routine. McDonald's for breakfast. I was like, I didn't even know they served breakfast until a couple of years ago. Anyways, I don't want to get down that rabbit trail. Let's just forget I said that.
Yeah.
That or Starbucks.
Back to the pandemic. What we decided is if we're, the ship might go down, but we're going to be on it if it does.
Love that. Love it.
And, there's a lot more conversation, a lot more strategy, a lot of other stuff that went along with that. But we were like, you know what? A lot of restaurants fired their managers. A lot of businesses, fired managers. They cut from the top down. We need to cut the highest salary staff and get rid of them. We went the other way. We were like, we're retaining our staff. We want to be a business that's a part and centered in the community. And you can't do that without good management. You can't do that without being involved in the business and being able to be nimble and react. And so, we made the difficult decision, like other businesses, to furlough 90% of our staff. We went from a staff of like 25 to, 3, 4, 5. And
Just chefs and managers.
yeah.
Yeah.
And just did the whole takeout thing. Barricaded the door with our tables that moved around so people couldn't walk in. Started taking orders, and our point, we did a lot. We invested in the business a lot in those first few months because our system wasn't set up to be successful for takeout, because we didn't view it as a strength. We didn't view it as, we were like, I don't feel like we're doing this well. Like I said, we shut down our delivery services and then it quickly turned them back on.
Yeah.
Because it became, less than 1% of our revenue to 100% of our revenue, but
Literally overnight.
Wow. And we opened up and we were like, hey, nobody's probably going to come because everybody's, trying to make what decision is best for them. And, there's a lot of uncertainty, and, we did not thrive financially during that time. It was challenging, just like it was for everybody else. But we planted the seed that we're here and that we're not going to close. And we shortened our hours a little bit. We did a couple other things to make it easier and streamlined and make sure that the staff that we could retain and pay, we had enough hours for them, but we also could make it work financially. So we kind of had to rework our model. We had to invest in some equipment because we knew, hey, this is, at the end of this, there's still going to be this demand, whenever the end of that is.
That was great foresight because, delivery has not gone away, even though COVID is far less of a thing now. It's like we definitely do delivery more than we ever did, by far.
Yeah, it's a fantastic way. And I think one thing that COVID did as an unintended consequence of COVID, maybe a positive consequence, is it shifted consumers to look at things differently. One thing that we found on the tail end of COVID is that people were more understanding of the difficulties that small businesses faced. And so if we were understaffed and couldn't meet all of their expectations, people were a little bit more understanding. People were very kind to the people that were working in the restaurant every day, that it's a risk. Everybody that was ordering takeout was mostly huddled up at home, but we're out here serving you. And so people were very kind and appreciative, and whether they tipped more or not didn't really matter. There's that sentiment was transferred to our staff, and they took that personally, and it was great. And it also opened up avenues. I mean, the technology investment in restaurants and in the restaurant infrastructure that happened during the pandemic wouldn't have happened without the pandemic. And so I'm not grateful for the pandemic in any way, shape, or form.
You just made lemonade.
You just have to, you used the word earlier, is pivot. You just take the new circumstance and you figure out how to make that work for you. And we did boring stuff like rewired our point of sale system, got a new one. We reworked our website and looked at it as we don't make any revenue through our website. That was kind of our mindset before the pandemic. And then our website became the only way people interact with our brand. We spent a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of effort into our brand, creating a branded experience for people in the restaurant. We lost that in the pandemic. So how do we infuse that into how we're doing things now?
So how did you do that?
We tried to drive every piece of digital traffic to our website. That worked for us because then you click on an online link, and we tried to personalize our online ordering a little bit more, infuse some of our fun branding. It's hard to get custom packaging and everything, especially during the pandemic, so we weren't able to do that at that point in time. But we tried to bring as much of our digital brand to people as we could, just knowing. And then also when people came to pick up food, being super friendly, super appreciative,
Right.
super nice. Our servers, our whole team, not just our servers, are great. We get the highest marks we read every review that comes through, good or bad. And the number one thing that comes back is that our people do a really good job of serving people.
They do.
That's
I
the
can,
number one.
I can attest. They
That's
do.
the number one thing we do well. Thank you, by
Yeah.
the way. And so we just decided, whatever that looks like in takeout, we're going to do it, and it required some creative thinking. And, we have people go above and beyond. Somebody forgot something, I'd see our team like running it down the street to them and doing
Wow.
stuff. And, but that really became, we had a delivery driver not show up for something. Our manager on her own just got in the car and drove it to the person's house. Was like, oh, I know where this is. It's right by my house. And just like took it. And it was like, okay, nobody asked that. No, if that food would have died in the restaurant and that person would never got it, we would have just refunded them and whatever. But, turned a mistake into, a real point of strength. And it wasn't our mistake. It was the delivery driver didn't come pick it up. But that was a problem we didn't need to solve, and one of our team members decided to solve it. And we did little things like that, planted seeds that we're here to stay, and we're going to fight it out. And I think a lot of people, the sentiment was real. You heard a lot of stuff on social media of like, go dine out at restaurants and support local restaurants and all that stuff.
For
and
sure.
a lot of people, we made a lot of friends during that time. There were certain people that became regulars during the pandemic that hadn't been before. And that was a real point for us that gave us confidence to go forward. Once we opened, we experienced just a surge in demand when we opened our dining room at 50%, and then we went back to takeout only. There was a little bit of, back and forth action there with the capacity we were able to have our dining room. But the minute we were able to open our dining room, no matter what capacity it was, we were exceeding the sales from the year before.
Wow.
No pandemic.
How cool.
And I attribute that 100% to how we treated people and the fact that we didn't close.
That's incredible, man. Because like for anyone who's listening who doesn't know, like you guys are already working on your margins are already on a knife's edge, at being a restaurant, and then you make everything from scratch. I'm sure you guys experience a ton of issues on getting, the supply chain issues, right? Getting your stuff and then having to make it and create it and then working through all of this and being a restaurant, which is already difficult, and then still coming out of it and being able to open new locations. That's incredibly commendable and obviously speaks to what you guys are doing as a company and kind of the culture you're building. That's fantastic. It's almost a little unbelievable. Like that's really, really great.
Well, thank
It's
you.
very cool.
Thank you. It and I don't just say that just to, be faux humble, but it really was our staff that did that. And I said it to our staff at our Tacoma location when we were opening up our Silverdale location, that the reason we're doing this is because of what you guys have done the last 3 years, last 4 years, is that's why, is people would routinely come on the weekends 20 plus miles away. We were driving like 15-20% of our revenue from people that were like more than 20 miles away from us on a weekend. Granted, you have the time doing stuff. I don't know what people were doing, but the fact that, me personally, I don't know if I'm getting in the car with a couple young kids to drive 20 miles to go to a breakfast joint that has an hour and a half wait. You know,
Absolutely.
you know, those are variables I can't handle right now. But that, I think that was just a testament to, it's not just about food. It's about a holistic experience that we created. Sure. And, you know, I don't know, like I said earlier, I get a lot of credit for being the founder, but the founding a company is a singular task. You do it once and then you're done with it. You know, I get to carry like I'm founder emeritus. I get to carry that title with me forever, as long as the business exists. But, you know, I did that one time, you know, and the rest of our team has done it ever since. It's not to say that I don't do anything. I mean, I have a real job and I worry about it. But my role looks different. You know, my role looks different today. I'm, you know, I've had to learn to transition from being founder to, you know, owner to president or whatever. You know, I don't carry a formal job title, but, you know, as the president or CEO of the company, that's my job now, is I have to interact with the business differently. I'm not just the founder. And so because of that, a lot of other people get to have their hand. They have their say in how, and especially breakfast. You talk about people eating breakfast at McDonald's, is, you know, coffee is the same way as breakfast. It's very, very habitual. Mm-hmm. You know, you want your same server, your same barista, your same items. You know, once people create a habit, it's very sticky. You know, it doesn't break easily. You have to do something to break that, most likely, or their circumstance needs to change. But, you know, that experience that's sticky with our guests, it's because of, you know, our cooks, our servers, our managers, our dishwashers. They're creating that experience because the people are coming in half of the time to see so-and-so. You know, I want to see, you know, Megan, or I want to see Lexi, or I want to see James or Lene. It's like that. I want to see that person. That's a part. They're a part of your routine, and so that's what I attribute that to.
I think you just found your vision statement. A sticky experience. You won't want to leave.
A syrupy experience.
A syrupy experience. You won't want to leave, and you can't.
You can't. You can't.
Oh my gosh, I have so many more questions. I want to ask about Silverdale. So you started, did you say 2020?
2022.
Oh,
yeah.
Totally wrong. Sorry. 2022, you started in Silverdale. Why, for people who aren't familiar with the area, less like why Silverdale specifically, but how did you choose your second location? That's got to be a difficult conversation. I mean, you live here in Tacoma, so it's probably pretty natural to look in Tacoma for your first location, and then Proctor, for a lot of reasons that you've already talked about, stood out to you. But Silverdale, as opposed to Puyallup or Olympia or Federal Way, why did you choose that location specifically?
Yeah, you hit a good point. You know, Tacoma was a really natural location for us because we live there. We're from here. We've spent a lot of time here. My wife, my parents, my whole family. And so you get to rely on subjective measures because you know your home market. It's a home game for us, you know. And so you know, we did demographic research. We visited places in Seattle. We visited places, you know, anywhere in between kind of where we were, just to say, hey, what's out there? Let's see it. But you really get to say, hey, you know what, Proctor? My parents actually live in Proctor now. We don't, but we were like, I would love to live here. You know, you get to kind of do that gut check test in Proctor. Right. And for Silverdale, we were like, okay, we need to do a bunch of research, and the numbers need to pencil out. So we pulled every demographic, psychographic, any kind of measure of consumer habit and everything from that area that we're serving, that radius, that 5-mile radius around Tacoma. And we're like, well, where is as good or better of who our core customers are? Where are our core guests?
Can you elaborate on that? Like where are you getting those numbers, and what numbers? Are you talking strictly population? I'm sure you're not. So what numbers are you talking about, and where are you finding those numbers?
So we looked internally at our guest. Who is our guest?
Oh, okay.
Who are the people that make decisions?
Interesting.
You know, one of the biggest decision drivers, whether to visit our restaurant or not, are females between 25 and 45.
How do you know that?
Partially because I was in the restaurant every day working when we first opened, and it is a subjective measure. But then we also had access to credit card data and all of that, legally through we didn't, go out and steal it.
Yeah, you
No,
acquired
this
all
is
that.
this is great content. I mean, I didn't know any of this. I hadn't even thought about
that, and so you're able to, some things for sure, some things you make an educated guess on, and we built our profile based on who we're seeing in the dining room, where are people coming from. It gave us when I say credit card data too, it was aggregated information. It was batches of people, batches of guests, batches of zip codes, things like that. Where are people coming from? We took our website, going to Google Analytics, and we pulled all of our data. This might be a little boring, but
this is great.
We pulled all of that information to see to kind of build a heat map. Why are people coming into Tacoma? Are they coming in to visit us specifically? Are they coming in because, the Proctor District is a beautiful district. There's so much shopping. You can kill a day there. You've got a farmer's market on Saturday.
Yeah.
It's got, also great food. You could have breakfast, lunch, and dinner there and have activity in between. There's parks. I mean,
And
there's
dessert.
so many great, and dessert, there's so many great things. And so it's like, well, are we just benefiting from that, or are we driving people of our own? And so we really had to answer those questions, and then we're like, let's go find those people. So you go on, Bureau of Labor Statistics. You look at, you can get on government websites and pull data for cities and what is the projected growth population of income earners. We pulled industry average report. So, part of the, boring statistic for independent restaurants, which we are, about 50% of the market share. So people making purchase decisions in our industry are people between 25 and 50 that are making over $100,000 a year family household income. And so let's go find where there's a big concentration of that, where that population is expected to grow more than the Washington population. So where's it going to grow faster out there? And Silverdale was one of those areas where people are that statistic was growing faster than other areas. And so we went out and found that. And then also you go out and you do the gut check. You do what you do in your home is you go, I like it here. If I wasn't living where I was living, I would like to live there.
Yeah, for sure.
And there was other places, I love like downtown Sumner. It's a beautiful neighborhood. It reminded me a lot of Tacoma. There were other places that we looked that had that same feel, and you engage with specific landlords, start conversations, and some of them work out, some of them don't. And Silverdale worked out, and we went with it.
So you heard it here first. Sumner coming 2024, maybe. We'll see.
Yes, we'll see.
Where's your coffee shop?
It is also in Silverdale.
Cool. And what is your coffee shop called? I'm sorry, I should know that.
No, it's okay. It's called Johnny Coffee.
Okay.
So
where'd you come up with the name for that?
Johnny was my maternal grandfather. And so my maternal grandparents, they actually had a cafe long, long ago in Federal Way. But they, to me, epitomized hospitality and service. And that was something that, when we look at ourselves as a bigger company, not just Waffle Stop, but our family business is at the core, we need to do what we do best. What's our core competencies? Our core competencies are we're good at serving people. And our core competency is we're good at building. I feel personally that we're good at building kind of a brand around something. There's a lot of things we're not good at, but I feel like we're good at those two things. And so, at the end of the day, does it really matter what the product is? Or, you have to be good. You have to execute that product very well. And coffee is something that was very complementary. But we had a real estate opportunity out there. So our two businesses out there share a location. They're two completely separate businesses, but they share a space. And so we had that opportunity, and we're like, well, what would work really well there? What is that space? What is that space desiring? And let's create something that really fits that space, complements our current business. And we had the idea for it was a nameless, formless coffee shop. I love coffee.
Absolutely. Who's your roaster?
It's Cafe d'Arte.
Okay.
So Cafe d'Arte roasts all of our coffee for the whole company. And we're using a different roast out there at Johnny Coffee. And so what we decided to do, and Johnny was he was part of the greatest generation, World War II Marine. He was kind of tough, but he had a beautiful interior. And so his favorite rose was the Tropicana rose. It's kind of this like pink coral reddish rose, and that's the logo. And there's a little coffee bean in the center, and that was kind of homage to our family's heritage of hospitality, and how coffee. He was very proud of the hard work that he put in, and he was very proud of being good at his crafts, and but he also was loving and kind, and a lot of people remember a lot of great things about him, and so we're like, how do we take that? And it's not building a brand around him, the person. It was encapsulating those values and turning that into a brand. And so Johnny Coffee to me felt like a natural fit. And so our MO is we want to provide third wave style coffee in a new way with our kind of trademark hospitality and service with a smile. And so we take kind of an industrial, we take a light roast that's wood roasted. It's alder wood roasted coffee. It's a light roast South American blend. And we put that through our espresso and our drip coffees and everything. And it creates this really beautiful flavor. The coffee itself is really good, but then when it's wood roasted, it gives it this kind of, woodsy feel, right? But
I see what you did there.
And so we kind of themed our whole space around that we went with like, okay, how do we build your grandpa's modern fishing cabin? And so we, hung a canoe up top, and we powder coated the espresso machine, this beautiful, Tropicana rose color. And we used a lot of natural, we got some live edge wood to build a bar, and we used a lot of natural materials, and we really wanted to build it around a motif or an aesthetic that really complemented the product that we were serving, and then decided to serve all of that the same way that we serve people at Waffle Stop, which is not taking ourselves too seriously, serving it with a smile, remembering people, being kind, and that's what we do.
I feel like you just need to take this podcast and like listen to it again, and then you will have your vision statement like perfectly, because you've said it like multiple times in different ways, and like you could just make a few different sentences out of things you've already said. It's been perfect.
Nice. I appreciate that.
Yeah. No, you've had a bunch of great ways of describing your businesses.
Nice.
Yeah.
And I am excited to see what you guys do next, because it seems like maybe you're not done.
We hope we are not done.
Okay, let's go.
Like I said earlier, the financial success of our business is dependent on doing everything else well. And that's where we're headed. We doubled in size this last year as a company.
Dude, that is
sizes and employees.
We went from one location to two locations.
Okay, got it.
Oversimplifying, but we doubled in size, and it sure felt like it to us.
Yeah.
And so, you always want to be continually growing and everything. But the one nice thing about being a small business, a family business is, you want to grow and you need to grow. I think, the economic model of always needing to grow sometimes gets some criticism, when you look at the financial markets and everything. And I think growing at all costs is a bad idea, but you do always want to strive for growth. You want to strive for growth personally as a human being, and you want your business to grow as well. And so, but what does growth mean? And that's for us this year. One of the big things that we learned this last year was, in order to grow externally, you also need to be growing internally at the same rate or faster.
Yeah,
and so, otherwise you stretch yourself thin. You don't have those capabilities. You start to lose grip on those core competencies that you have. And that's for us. I'm talking about that in our business context, but also my capacity as a leader needs to change, because we could continue to grow, but I have some growth that I need to do personally this year in order to prepare ourselves to continue to grow externally and open up new locations. And so it'd be great to open up more locations. It'd be great to do that as quick as possible, but you also have to always be aware of where you're at personally as a leader, but also, where your business is at, and be able to honestly assess that and say, are we ready for that? Because as the owner, the nice thing is we do have agency. We do get to choose. And so you have to make sure that even aligns with your personal life. If you have a family, or if you have, friends or whatever, everything that you value in life, I think everything needs to match up together. And if those things are in alignment, then to the moon.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think people who criticize growth don't truly see how much good a small business like yours, small as of today, but growing, right? But a small business like yours does. I mean, think of all the people you employed through COVID. That's huge.
Yeah.
A lot of restaurants just shut down and those people didn't have jobs anymore. And so growth has a ripple effect on a lot of people. It can really change the lives of a lot of people, even just people who, wanted waffles during the shutdown and they were able to get them from you guys. I mean, a lot of people benefit from businesses like yours. And I think that's awesome.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. Every business started small, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
Google started in a garage. I don't know if they
Yeah, I
ever.
think Amazon did too, right?
Yeah.
Bezos hanging out in the garage
Yeah.
selling books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I mean, you only get to be that size if that many people need your services.
Yeah.
So, and they were able to deliver upon them well, and now they're not small anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I love food, and there's such like a romantic side to food. There's a difference between just going in and slamming a bologna sandwich and then going to a place that provides an experience. You know what I mean? Like you walk in.
Bologna sandwich.
Yeah, man. Like obviously there's no like romantic air about that at all. But you go to a really great restaurant that provides a really good environment. The people are really great. The food is, you guys bake everything from scratch. Like that is, I truly love that, and it just makes me happy. And waffles, who doesn't like waffles?
Right? Which is a great tangent to
pancakes
next
with
question.
abs, dude.
What's your favorite item on your menu?
Boom.
I love our chicken and egg bowl. So it's our southern waffle, which is made with cornmeal. So it's kind of our twist on a biscuit, I guess, of sorts. I wouldn't expect a biscuit if you haven't had it before. It's just our twist on that in waffle form. And so it's a little bit crunchy, a little bit more savory flavoring. And we put some Tillamook cheese on it and melt it on the waffle. And then we do our, hand breaded and fried chicken.
Dude, this is so I am on I'm 4 days into probably a 7-day water fast right now. So this is just amazing.
It's only water?
Dude, water and coffee.
Okay.
Yeah, I had no food in 5 days. So this is intense.
That's a lot.
Keep telling me about the your favorite food though.
And then we make a house-made pepper cream gravy and put that right on top. And we serve it with 2 eggs any style.
It's
and
so good.
It's
I've had it. It's very good. Except I think your best item on your menu is your, I don't know what you call it, your waffle fries nachos.
the chicken and waffle fries.
Yeah,
with the cheddar cheese and the ranch.
I call them nachos, but yeah, they're so
Yeah,
good.
You can call them nachos.
Yeah, that's what I call them. They're
Yeah.
so stinking good. My wife and I will sometimes go there and just get that to share because it's huge.
It is. It's giant.
It doesn't
giant.
even make sense.
Yeah.
It's so big.
So have you had our mess hall?
No, she has though, and
Okay.
so yes, I have. I've had bites.
So it's 2 waffles, hash browns, a bunch of eggs, meat,
Yeah.
sausage gravy. That was the first dish that I ever had when we. So I'm not a chef, and we developed our pearl sugar waffle recipe, and we worked with a chef to develop everything else. And even our chef that we worked with, who was just a sweetheart, he was the best. But even he was like, maybe do a little bit of this. He kind of zhuzhed it up a little bit.
Zhuzhed it up.
Yeah, yeah. My mom is a fantastic cook, but there's a difference between, cooking and producing food for thousands of people and having it be the same every
Totally.
time.
Absolutely.
And so my mom is beautiful at it just needs a little bit more of that. It's like, okay, well, I need to do a little bit more of that, like 40 times this week when I'm making that. And so that kind of style of cooking doesn't work well in restaurants. Need some documentation.
Yeah.
But our mess hall, that was the first dish that I ate, and our chef, he was like, hey, because we're not restaurateurs, we don't know anything about, eating a menu. We flew out to where he was working from, and he was like, hey, we're going to eat the menu in like 2.5 days. And it's like 40 something items. And then some of the ones that didn't make the cut too. And so it was even more than that. And he was like, so pace yourself. And I ate about 3/4 of that thing. And that was the first dish we tasted, but it was so good and so craveable. And even at that time when we were building that, we were just like, we were still really insecure. So all we had was a brand, a mock-up of a website, and then food we've never tasted. And so when we were flying out there, I remember it was my dad and I, and we flew out, and we were like, I don't know if this is going to work. Really depends on how this weekend goes. And if we have confidence that, not that the food is good, but that we can do this, that we can execute this, that we can build a building and an environment around to do this 1,000,000 times. Not 1,000,000 restaurants, but like serve this dish well over and over and over. And we had that the first time, and we both just indulged to the max on all of our food. And we were like, that was a good sign.
Yeah,
Because we didn't want to make the restaurant to serve us, but we kind of followed that principle of like, make something that you want to enjoy. That's part of how if something's right or not, is if you are energized by it and if it excites you. And the food absolutely excited me. And
I bet
I almost ate the entire thing, and it was
pace yourself.
It was a rough
great
2.5 days.
Oh my gosh. If we have you back on the podcast, I hope it's when you start like a business explaining how you stay in shape while owning a restaurant called Waffle Shop, because that doesn't really make sense to me.
If you could chart my weight, it's dependent on how much time I spend in there.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, you got to kind of distance yourself sometimes. But it's good. It's, you have to love what you do. You just have to. And then you have to have the discipline to not eat it every day.
Oh my goodness. That'd be so
difficult.
hard. Yeah. I mean, I've gone to Waffle Shop quite a few times, but sometimes I'm like, I want to go, but no, because I know I'm not going to get what I need to eat today to feel good about myself. But that's good, right? Actually, let's talk about that for a second, because we've talked about this, prefacing this podcast just off record. You've talked about how that's kind of hard to hear sometimes when people say things like, oh, they critique your menu maybe. And I wasn't even critiquing it. I was saying, I love your menu so much. I want to go there for dessert. That's almost what I'm saying, right? Mm-hmm. And I can't go there when I'm trying to like be on a diet or something. So how have you dealt with critique about your menu and your business? And I mean, a lot of people in the area, and they started going to your restaurants, and they probably started talking to you and giving you advice. How has that been?
When you start a business, it doesn't really matter what it is. It's really personal. It's linked into who you are as a core. It's your idea, it's your baby, especially before you open. Nobody else has, you haven't done it yet. So it's your imagination, really. And so you get this really weird link between what you're going to do for a living and, part of your identity, part of your hopes and your dreams. And, that was what we did, is we were like, I want to build the restaurant that I want to go into and have breakfast at. And so with that, that's great, and that's very energizing, and it provided a lot of direction, and helped us form our brand. Is because after a while, that brand separated, and it was like, well, Waffle Stop is really, I'm the one that's making decisions on behalf of a business. Waffle Stop will tell me what it needs, and I will provide it. But at first, it's one and the same. It's your identity, and it is hard, because you interact with people that you see, and it's a home game. So everybody's coming into your restaurant, and it was probably the first year or so, and it'll still get me every once in a while when someone goes, oh, I went in there the other week, and at first you're flattered, because I remember the night before we opened, I was like, I sure hope people come. I sure hope, because your family and your friends, everybody's supportive. I have a great family. I have great friends. I have a lot of people that have been really lucky that have supported us, in a lot of different ways. And so, but once all that, they can't come every day and support you financially. They're not paying my salary. They're not, paying our employees and all of that. And so, You're like, I wonder once, the dust settles, what is this really? And there was a lot of fear that first night, going to bed, waking up knowing that, this thing is open to the world the next day. And the world being, it could be a very small world because one person might walk through the door. But you have to learn that you got to let go of that. Because like we were talking about earlier, other people have a say. Once you have employees, once you hire an employee, you have to take every stakeholder into account. And, in business school, you hear the word stakeholder and it sounds really stale just because it's something that you need to memorize to take a test. And you think a stakeholder, you're like, who are my stakeholders versus stockholders and all this, it seems like a very academic or, term, but, your stakeholders are everybody. It's your guests, it's your vendors that you pay, it's your landlord, it's your employees. It's really anybody that has a hand in your business or on your business or on you. Those are stakeholders that you need to serve well. And they really do all have a say in your business, and you have to serve them well. And, for me, it took a long time for me to separate my identity from the restaurant and how the restaurant was doing, because it was really difficult when somebody would say, I ate at your restaurant. Could have been better.
I can't believe people say that.
Well, there's not a lot of work. When I worked in finance, I did back office functions. Nobody knew how good I was at my job or really what I did. It's not because I was secret or anything, but they don't interact, but you can walk into Waffle Stop and how the experience you had, you just it's the natural thing. You would just naturally relate that, okay, I had a good experience. I was about a 4.7 out of 5 stars. Sam's about 4.7 out of 5 stars good at his job, That's how you equate it. It's really, I don't think anybody meant to hurt my feelings when they said that.
Oh, of course, yeah.
It's all well-meaning and it's all feedback, and you realize that, a lot of people probably don't even remember that they said those things.
Right.
Yeah.
And also it's because people really care, and people say really weird things when they really care and they really want you to do well. And, but you also, not everybody knows your context either.
Yeah.
And so
people don't realize how much goes into starting something like that. Like, this is much lesser of a level, but my wife and I bought a fourplex for the first home we ever bought was a fourplex. And we decided we were going to turn 3 of the units into Airbnbs. And we put our blood, sweat, and tears into those units. I mean, this every single apartment needs so much work. We did so much of the work ourselves, and then we set up all the damn IKEA furniture that we walked through and picked out, and spent so much time on it. And it started out 5 stars, 5 stars, 5 stars, and then the first 4-star came, and we're like, why was that a 4-star? And they actually wrote a good review, but it was 4 stars. I'm like, come on, Karen, explain, why was this 4 stars? She didn't even say it.
So that was basically a 1-star review in your mind.
It was 100% a 1-star review, and it was a total Karen, because we're just sitting there. I don't know. Is that an inappropriate thing to say?
I don't know. Run with it.
Okay, I'm rolling with it. We were in bed going, I'm gonna message her and be like, hey, why'd you give us 4 stars? We didn't, but we were that close because her review was it was so great. They had put so much thought into it, blah blah blah, all these good things, and then it's 4 stars. Oh my gosh. Anyways, now I don't even look at those. But when we first started out, those hurt.
They do.
The first 3-star we got, oh my God. And it was because of something we couldn't control too.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. It hurts so bad. Anyways, sorry to
it always
make it about
chafes
me.
you a little bit. We don't have a parking lot of our own, and Proctor's hard to park in. And so we sometimes we'll get a bad review about our parking experience. And it's it wasn't me.
Yeah, exactly. What do you
But, the thing is it's all good info. It's all feedback. And, it's so hard. It was so hard for me to, like I said, we as a team, we read all of the reviews and go through them, and it's so hard to sometimes because those are sometimes people, they'll say something like you said that's outside of your control specifically, but there's some times when unfortunately it is within your control and you make a mistake, and when the business was linked to my identity, that was hard to handle.
Really
It was hard
yeah.
to make myself log onto the computer and type in YELP.com and
Oh,
click on
yeah.
the business and it, you know, it was a very long drawn out process, and then
So,
you'd
how
feel
did you disconnect yourself and really kind of start to take some of that potential criticism as like a learning experiences? Because I feel like that's got to be a lot of business owners, right? I mean, even you're talking about starting your Airbnbs. So, how were you able to kind of extract those from each other?
it took a lot of time and practice. You know, one thing that I recognized is when I first opened, all I did was try to make the business work, and I tried to be whoever I thought the business needed me to be, and it became really one sided. You know, and I became a pretty unhealthy version of myself. You know, and my family paid the price for it by working extra long hours, and you know, I thought, okay, well, you know, you always hear about business owners working, you know, 80-hour weeks. So if I'm not working 80 hours, I'm not really trying hard, you know, and you hear all of these things, you take all of these things and you don't apply them in your context. You just apply them and you go, well, that's okay. That's what it takes. You know, if me doing all that I'm willing to do whatever it takes for the business to succeed today, you know, but I have boundaries and I have things that I'm willing to do and things that I'm willing to not do. And there's certain things that precipitate taking action right now, and there's certain things that can wait. And it takes a lot of wisdom and strength to be able to say that can wait, you know. And there's certain things that you need to be, you need to be prepared to handle right away. You know, there's certain things, if you get a certain phone call, you know, for me, I've been able to enjoy at times the flexibility of being a small business owner and being my own boss, quote unquote. But that comes with the knowledge that you're on call. You're never not on call, you know? I mean, I'm not a silent owner or anything like that, you know. So for me, being involved in my business, running the business on a day-to-day basis, you're on call all the time, you know, and it's hard to disassociate from that. And you really, for me, I don't know if I'll ever be able to, but
And
you
is
know,
that okay with you?
yeah,
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 me too.
yeah, because you know, kind of how I found that is I realized I went back to the core and the basics of why did I get into this, you know, and I got into the hospitality industry because I wanted to serve people. My family and I, my wife and I, we, you know, talked and thought and strategized and prayed and everything, and we felt like this is what we are supposed to do, you know, and so that transcends my work life. That's just a part of who I am as a person. You know, I can't have my work life integrate into every little piece, you know, because I have a family that I need to be present with. I have friends that I need to be present with. And, you know, I have responsibilities as an adult that I need to take care of. And, you know, right now I'm a student as well. And so it's like I have other responsibilities in my life, you know, and so, but the business needs to get its due, but it needs to be properly ranked in, it needs to be in its proper place. And so for me, it became looking at the holistic picture, and that's really where the journey began. You know, is recognizing it's like knowing that you have a problem. And I was like, I had an overworking problem and taking things way too personally problem, and it made me cranky. And it was like you know, it took my wife. I mean, actually, honestly, it was my wife that really guided me through that time. She's extremely self-aware, extremely kind, extremely patient. Which is those are all great skills to have when you or your husband or your spouse is starting a business. But, you know, it was just like, this isn't you. And I was like, okay, like, we'll explain that, you know, like, and I probably said it just like that. Explain that. Why? But it was, you know, it was like, you don't, you know, once on reflection, it's like, yeah, I'm not enjoying what I do and it's my fault, you know? And that was another thing that her infinite wisdom had said. She's like, you're doing everything right, but you're not enjoying it. And I was like, okay, well, why is that? It's like, you know, it could either be one or two things. Maybe I'm just not cut out for it. And I had to accept that. Maybe I'm not right for this. You know, I'm not in the best position I am. You know, my strengths are not this or whatever. Maybe I made a bad call, you know, and it's not the business for me. Or maybe I'm approaching it wrong and I am the right person. And I went through all of that self-discovery and reflection and going through that. And I realized that at the other side, I was like, I need to have harmony, you know, I was trying to apply my prior work experience as being kind of a 9 to 5 worker, and I was trying to compartmentalize everything. But when you're an entrepreneur, you don't really have that opportunity because it is kind of your whole life, at least for a little bit. And it's a large part of who you are. It's born out of a personal passion, most likely. There's a lot. It's very different than just going out and getting a job. There's different demands, there's different polls, and you're also personally interested in what you're doing. And so normally, if you work just a normal job, I used to be able to compartmentalize what I did for a living. And so I could go do that. And then I had other interests, but my interest right now is my business. It's a hobby as well. I like it. I enjoy it. I desire to know more about it. I desire to learn about it. I desire to be a better leader. So a lot of what I'm doing for work also looks like what I do for recreation. Like every part of my life I feel is integrated. And once I recognized that and then started to put boundaries in place and allow those things to be able to live and breathe and move a little bit, I can't always have my family pay the price for the business needing more. I also sometimes need not the business to pay a price, but I also need to be flexible in both ways, and once you kind of realize that, hey, I need to integrate my entire life to support what I do for a living. It needs to work for my spouse and I. It needs to work for my children. It needs to work for me. It needs to work for our staff. And I'm talking a lot about me right now, but it also needs to work for the staff. I could set it up to serve me, but if I set it up entirely to serve me, I would have 0 employees because nobody would want to work for me, And so you have to, okay, there's another concentric circle that I need to draw of my staff. I need to integrate that as well. So I need to really create this ecosystem as an entrepreneur where I can thrive in all the areas of my life. And that was a big undertaking. I don't know how to succinctly put that together into something that sounds good or that is transferable to other people. But for me,
you just did. That was good.
Okay. Yeah. But for me, that really finding those synergies, I guess, for lack of a better word, was really what transformed my life and allowed me to thrive, not just at work, but at home, as a husband, as a father, and, exercise or whatever my personal interests are. I was able to feel like, okay, my head's above water now.
Observation. I'm very numbers oriented, and you were obviously in accounting, and it's hard in a service industry, real estate service industry, Airbnb is service industry. Those are my businesses, and obviously restaurant is service industry. It's hard because when it comes to numbers, things are very objective. It's like it's either true or not true. It's right or wrong. It's like this evens out or it doesn't. If you did a good job because the balance is 0 at the end of it. Mm-hmm. And in a subjective business, you can do everything right and it's still wrong to somebody else because in their subjective opinion, they didn't like it or it wasn't what they were looking for. And there's nothing you did wrong. And that was hard for me to grasp, like the parking example for you or, whatever the case. If it's something that's out of your control, you just have to say it's out of my control. Like that's not something I could have done better or I couldn't have made their experience better. That just is the way they took it. And that was hard for me to grasp going into something that's more subjective as far as experience goes.
Yeah. It is hard. And, one thing for me, like that parking example, one thing that, when we read that, I was like, your first reaction is you're like, yeah, that's not my job, so-and-so is to find you parking, but then you reflect
Karen.
on it. Karen. Yeah, might have been the same person. No, I'm just kidding.
I bet it was. She was terrible.
It probably was that Karen. But the other thing is it gives you an opportunity, and I've tried to get better at this over time of asking yourself, well, how could I have prevented that? Is there something that I could have put in maybe in the delivery instructions on our online ordering? I could have said something.
We could have said extreme
parking
ownership
stuff.
aspect.
I was just about to say that.
And it's like sometimes you can ask yourself, and then what? And then what? And then what? It's like asking yourself why like 1,000 times. It's like you could ask yourself that, and you might be able to, no, there was no way I could prevent that, And there's also the extreme ownership can, become extreme micromanagement,
True.
or taking things way too personally. And sometimes you do just need to kind of clap your hands and, be like, yep, I did all I could do today. I did all I could do for that person. And sometimes you can't recover them, as a guest or, as somebody that stays with you. And those ones are challenging and they do haunt you, and they should. One of operations manager, he helped us open the restaurant as a consultant, and he's still with us today. And he has so much more experience in the industry than I do. And one of the things he was like, if you lose that sensitivity towards your guests, it's time to hang them up.
That's a good way. That's a good point.
Being empathetic is so important in the hospitality industry, and being able to have that and treat every guest how they deserve to be treated and not how the previous person treated you, is one of the hardest things to do.
Yeah.
It really is, but it's also one of the most important things to do. And I think that, the restaurants that I have been to that are some of my favorite and the best experiences that I've had at hotels or any kind of service industry, it's the places that do that really, really well, time and time again. And some of my favorite restaurants I've been to multiple times, and they make mistakes. It's hard to nail it every time. You could be a 5-star restaurant and you could still make a mistake. And I've been to them. There's some in Tacoma that are my favorite restaurants. I think they're 5-star restaurants, and I have not had a perfect experience every time I've been there. But the reason why I still call it a 5-star experience is because of the way that they handled it. And even if I never said anything, is that they follow it up with another great experience. And it's like you don't make the same mistake twice. And really being attuned and empathetic to your guests. It's like, that's the good stuff.
That's awesome. Well, I think that's a great place to wrap it up. Yeah. And we'll ask our final 4 questions.
Yeah.
You ready for this?
Let's do it.
Okay.
Ready,
so
Sam?
we ask these questions at the end of each podcast. The first question, if you had $20,000 in 6 months to build a business, not a lot of time, not a lot of money, what would you do? Unrelated to, I'm gonna make it harder on you.
Okay, let's do it.
Unrelated to food industry.
Alrighty. I would do something like apparel design, maybe hard goods. I'm really interested in like design. I like the aesthetic and being able to do, I love kind of exploring new things, and, food is a way to do that. Apparel or, design, other things are another avenue for that kind of creativity. I think I would do something kind of in hard goods or apparel based, even if it was like printing t-shirts or something, because when you say, a little bit of money and a little bit of time, I have to prove my unit economy really quickly and be able to scale that. I need to make money off of every single thing. I can't sink all of my money into something that's going to take a long time to ramp up.
Yeah.
So maybe that's the accountant in me, but I'm like, I gotta start making money really quick. And so maybe invest in something that I can prove that unit economy. I can build that margin, that variable margin into right away. Might be a really boring answer. I'd be
no, it's a great answer.
What your other guests have said.
I love accountants.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because their answers are so like
they make complete logical sense.
And it's not emotional. They're not emotional. It's like not like this is my dream.
Like,
it's
I kind
more
of like design things.
This is how I would do it.
And things, and this is what makes sense. Let's go. This is what we're doing.
Well, and since you made it hard on me, it's like I wouldn't start another business. My real answer is I'm doing exactly what I want to do. And so for me, the next step is what can I logically? How can I noodle out more than 20,000 in 6 months?
And that is a great answer. Yeah. All right, Andrew, you're
beautiful.
up.
Second question. So most people have read top 50 business books. What is one book that might be a little obscure that you think that most people maybe haven't read, but you think is super important or influenced you in kind of business?
So back when we were talking about separating ourselves, or me separating myself from the business, one of the books that I read that was really influential for me it's called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. It's by John Mark Comer. Disclaimer: as a follower of Jesus, it's a spiritual book and has spiritual undertones. But what it talks about is eliminating hurry from your life, creating margin, creating an opportunity for you to be fully present in every area of your life, and to kind of remove those distractors, whether they be digital or schedule based, or whatever it is that is causing you to have that constant hurry. Because being hurried or being busy or looking at your phone too much or whatever, Apple, when you have your iPhone, it'll tell you your screen time. Oh, your screen time, and it's usually up. At least it is for me. Your screen time was up over last week, and it's like, well, that makes me feel better. But it's and it's those things draw you in, and they can distract you from the things that you really truly cherish in life, like family or your business or your personal interests, whatever it is. And this book really helped me unpack what was undergirding those habits that I was creating and not able to break. And there's a lot of it. One thing that I loved about the book too is it brought in a lot of social psychology points. A book that I read after that was called Digital Minimalism by Cal Newport, I believe, and that it kind of said the same thing in a different way. Of not minimalism as in like having like one pair of shoes, but minimalism in the sense of simplifying your life. And for me, that book was really influential for me, and all of the books that I read around that. There's another book called Margin.
Great book.
You've read it?
Yep.
Okay.
It's a great book.
It's a great book, and it all talks about kind of the same thing, is really unpacking, simplifying, realizing we put all of this as entrepreneurs. Sorry, I'm getting on a little soapbox here, but as entrepreneurs, you put all of the effort into creating a vision statement and a mission statement. And I'm going to, once I re-listen to this podcast and rework mine, but you put all of this time and effort into doing that for your business. But how many people really approach it? You pour over your finances. A lot of people got into investing during the pandemic. You put a lot of effort into creating all of that, a strategy around it. And I for, at least for me, and maybe I'm just speaking for myself, is I never had a core vision for my life, a core thing. I had core desires and things that I really longed for, but could you really deliver it as succinctly as you can your business statement, your mission statement, your vision statement, your purpose of values? Do you have core values, or do you have aspirational values? Do you have values you hope to uphold, or do you have values that you're actually upholding? And for those books really helped me step back and say, okay, I'm putting a lot of effort into my business. Why don't I spend a little bit of time in prayer, reflection, meditation, thinking, writing down, journaling, however you do that? Why don't I put a little bit of time doing that towards myself and what I want my life to look like? I think I'm trying to approach everything in a little bucket, and let's approach it holistically. How can I create margin, not just at business, to where I'm so swamped, so I'm not able to, I'm too busy. I got a backlog of emails. I got a backlog of, bank statements that I need to reconcile, that I'm not able to be out there talking with guests. And sometimes that stuff happens, and life is busy, and you have to recognize that as a season. But if you're never out of that season, that's an indicator that your life is out of alignment. And, there's something that needs to be done about that. And that book for me, sorry, that was a really long-winded answer.
No, it's perfect.
It's a great answer.
Yep.
That helped me reprioritize what my core longing and desire was for life, and then everything else naturally flows out of that, because they're not just New Year's Eve or New Year's resolutions. They're more intentions and movements for your life. And so once you create those habits, you don't need to remember it, and you don't need to remember to drink 30 ounces of water. Not that those things are bad, and that those goals are steps to, a healthier lifestyle and other stuff, but it's less about that and more of just, I'm just incorporating that activity into my life better. And, so it's more of an intentional life than a life that's marked with a bunch of tasks and always trying to catch up to, this ideal that you've crafted for yourself that you'll never be able to achieve. And so it's given me a lot of peace, but it also gave me a lot of direction.
I love that. That's great.
That was a great answer.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. If you had a week to spend anywhere, all paid vacation, you and your family, where would you go?
Coronado, California,
Okay.
down in San Diego.
That's where you're from, right?
No, I'm from here.
Okay.
But I absolutely love, I've had the privilege of being able to go down and spend time on Coronado Island time after time, and, thought about that question. And, there's a lot of places in the world, but there's only a few places where you just feel like, wow, this makes me feel at peace. And this is it. And for me, that's it. And if all expenses are paid, I'm still going to the place that I love the best.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
right
great.
on. That's awesome. So the fourth and final question, and this doesn't have to be something that you actually believe in, but what is your favorite conspiracy theory?
Love it. So after I got done stressing about the restaurant during the pandemic, I hit Netflix up.
Oh, let's go.
Yeah.
It's a good start.
The Curse of Oak Island was something my wife and I, after because we had our first child during the pandemic, and so after she went down for her last nap, we would tune into The Curse of Oak Island, which is a History Channel show, and it talks about there's an island off the coast of Nova Scotia that has a allegedly storied history of, there's a supposedly buried treasure on the island, which, like, hey,
Let's go.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
A buried treasure. Come on.
It's these two brothers with way too much money that basically created this crew and team, and they're following there's so many, it could have been like the Spanish Inquisition dropped treasure there, or, there's so many different stories and theories, and so they'll talk to somebody like a local that's like, oh, I know where the treasure's buried, and they'll follow that lead and dig, and there's supposed to be all these channels, and the craziest thing about the show is some of the stuff, like they're like, oh, there's supposed to be this, mine shaft that runs this thing, and then they'll get a big boring equipment and drill down, and they find it, and you're like, what?
Like, okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
and so it
man.
just sucks you in, and it's like, we're always trying to be like, well, could this be the one? Could this be the one? And it's so fun to watch, because you're like, now they probably have History Channel money behind them, but I'm like, they're going for it,
That's so
great.
rad.
They're doing, it's one of the brothers of them is like just super passionate about it, and it's like absolute resolve. It's here, and if we got to spend $1 billion to make
It's
$1 billion
gonna
and
happen.
$1, it's
Let's
happening,
go.
baby.
Love it. Oh my goodness.
I love
I've never heard of that one too. That's
I haven't
fantastic.
either.
I'm gonna have
Yeah.
to check it out.
One thing, I mean, it kind of goes back to everything else. I love watching people that are passionate about something.
That's exactly what I was about to say. I think that's one of the things I love about conspiracies is like listening to people who really believe in something that I don't believe in. I love seeing, and they're just, man, they're so into it. This did not happen, or I'm telling you, the aliens are right there. That's what, and it's like, by the end of it, I'm like, let's go. I love that. I love the just people who are so into something. It's contagious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's super fun.
Yeah. That's a good answer.
Yeah, that was a good answer.
I think I said that about all of yours.
You gotta watch it. They got like so many seasons.
Oh, no
So,
kidding. So they're
yeah.
still going.
So
for it.
it'll last you a whole week. You can just binge all.
A whole week.
I think
Okay.
he's implying that real estate is slow right now.
There you go.
Well, I mean,
So you started a podcast and you're real estate agents.
Yeah.
Now, what does that say about the real estate market?
we really like talking to people. That's
I just like the sound of my own voice. So.
Oh, geez.
Oh man, this was fun. Thank you again for doing
was
this.
great.
It was great hearing about your businesses, and we are really excited to see where they go. Can you conclude by just telling us where people can tell
Plug
us your
yourself
3
in.
locations, plug yourself, where people can learn more about you guys?
Yeah, that's excellent. So Waffle Stop is one of our businesses. We opened in Tacoma in 2018 and Silverdale in 2022. You can visit us at eatwafflestop.com or at eatwafflestop on Instagram. And Johnny Coffee is at Drink Johnny Coffee on Instagram and Facebook, and drinkjohnnycoffee.com.
Love it.
Okay.
All right, man. Thanks again. This was a blast.
Thank you so much.
Ton of fun. Thanks, Sam.
Appreciate it.